unless you want a little bit of a review of what we went over. Before we start off, yeah, we are talking about the holiday shopping season, November and December, but before we kick off the topic, thank you very much. Day number 2. What is it right now? Lunchtime, oh my gosh.
Yeah, so thanks for being here during lunch.
I hope you're not skipping through lunch, but we really appreciate your time. And we wanted to share with you some insights that Kayla and I were able to dig up for the upcoming holiday season. My name is Dan Shim. I'm Senior Industry of Consumer Insights and Strategy. I have been with Salesforce for about 10 years. Prior to that, I worked in the retail industry, and that's why this topic is near and dear to my heart, specifically apparel. And I could just tell you from my experience, the holiday season, which in this case we're defining as November and December, right? That's when Cyber Week falls in, people are getting their gifts ready for the Christmas holiday season. That constituted about 40% of our annual revenue. Pretty big. It was, those 2 months really made or break our season, and we're really happy to share some of these insights with you. Hopefully you can use our advice to plan for the biggest season of the year. And I'm joined by Kayla.
Yep, my name's Kayla Schwartz. I've been with Salesforce now for almost 8 years. Dan and I work together. We've been together pretty much this entire time. Mm-hmm. And
we've been paying attention to each and every holiday season since we've been working together.
Exactly. We do this every year, and we pretty much talk holiday 12 months out of the year. It is never a non-holiday period for Dan and I. So my background is mostly in data analysis and strategy. And we are here to bring you our holiday predictions for 2022. So the data that we use to help inform our predictions is twofold. Mainly, we're using a very large data set. It's representative of over 1 billion shoppers. This is Salesforce proprietary data that we collect off the Salesforce Commerce Cloud platform. So these are all the taps and clicks of all of the shopping sessions that consumers are making around the world. We collect this data, aggregate it, we anonymize it, and then we model it to help us build these predictions. Yeah. Now what's really cool is that we have about a decade's worth of data, so we can go really deep into some advanced data modeling. And then in addition to that, we perform several surveys throughout the year. The most recent one was just collected a couple of weeks ago actually. We poll consumers, trying to get a pulse check on how are they feeling about the economy, what are they thinking about in terms of their buying habits and behaviors, and we merge those two pieces of data together to help create a full story.
Yeah. The name of the game here is insights. Kayla and I spend a lot of time digging up data points that provides a narrative of where we are in the industry now and where we're going 6 months from now. The consumer sentiment surveys that you see on the screen, that's something that I personally run. We survey close to the population of Albania, I believe. That's the number of consumers that we actually ask questions in regards to their plans for the holiday season. You'll see a lot of those insights in here as well.
All right, So Dan, let's dig in. So before we dive into our 5 predictions, we're going to set the stage a little bit and talk about what we saw over the past 2 holidays and what we're seeing macroeconomic conditions today. So over the last 2 holidays, we were truly seeing unprecedented digital adoption, and we talk about this word a lot, probably a little bit overused, but it truly was unprecedented. In 2020, we saw 50% year-over-year growth in same-site digital sales globally between November and December. To put this into context, in a pre-COVID period, we saw anywhere between 10-15% growth, maybe a little bit under that, depending on the time of year. So this was truly a rapid digital acceleration in 2020. And in 2020, we saw that the digital acceleration caused a shipping crisis. Capacity constraints with those last mile carriers were strained beyond belief. And so consumers were pushing their purchasing earlier and earlier in anticipation of not being able to get their packages on time. Then we fast forward to 2021, the narrative has changed slightly. Inventory is the biggest concern. We saw capacity constraints in those containers, manufacturing slowdowns in Asia, manufacturing plant shutdowns, put a strain on inventory. We still continue to see digital adoption, 5% growth year over year, which looks small, but when we put it into context of that rapid growth we saw in 2020, the fact that we saw any positive growth at all is compelling. So those digital behaviors that consumers picked up in 2020 stuck around in 2021. Now, so what do we think about is going to happen in 2022? Well, we think the main theme this year is going to be all around margin and profit. How are brands and retailers going to maintain profitability in light of so many different macroeconomic factors happening across the globe, from inflation, not only on the consumer side, but on the manufacturing side, the increase in the cost of goods, raw material shortages, slowdowns across the supply chain continuing to play out. How are those going to impact consumer buyers, and how are retailers going to maintain profitability?
Okay, so Kayla has mentioned earlier all those clicks and taps that our consumers are interacting with the e-commerce sites that Salesforce is powering. We see it all. If you're shopping on one of our sites, we see everything. So if we aggregate that data, we have some updates for you on 2022 Q1. So what you'll see here is something that we refer to as the shopping index. On a quarterly basis, we see how much e-commerce volume has grown over the last corresponding quarter. Q1 didn't look so good. If you look at the page that you see, it was a shrinkage. It was a contraction in e-commerce growth. I've never seen that before in the 7 years that I've covered it. So in Q1, the business was weak. And if you take a look at the traffic and the average order value, all of those key performance metrics did come down. What we do think going forward, Q2, Q3, and then culminating into the holiday season, we see this trend continuing. We're looking at some early Q2 data. It doesn't seem like the comparable sales are there in the e-commerce world. We do think a lot of that volume, that revenue volume, will transfer back to the store channel, which we'll get into later. But there is a little bit of a rebalancing. We do see some pressure in the e-commerce world, and these are some of the reasons that we can point to as to why. And we discovered this from our conversations with customers and our customers and consumers alike. There's a problem with inflation, and I think this is not news to anybody. What we pay particular attention to, though, is not what you and I may be familiar with, commonly referred to as the CPI or the Consumer Price Index. That's at like 8% right now. We actually take a look at the Producer Price Index a little bit more. That's a better indication of what the cost of goods sold is for a lot of the retailers and consumer goods companies out there. And that's increasing at a far higher clip than the CPI is. So there's tremendous margin pressure that we anticipate retailers and brand owners will go through now, and that will be exacerbated in the holiday season. Higher energy prices related to shipping and fulfillment of goods. I also wrote in here, can you guys hear me still? Yep, okay. I also wrote in here shortages and overages. Shortages, you know, when the pandemic happened, the world came to an abrupt stop, and I think what a lot of the manufacturing companies realized is really hard to lurch that back into a full motion factory, full motion production factory again. So there's a little bit of a delay there. And then what we found, you know, we heard this news yesterday. Anybody heard the news about Target yesterday? Target saying that they have a little bit too much inventory. And then Walmart followed up by saying, yeah, we have a lot of inventory too. There's a lot of overages. They over-purchased. And I think they overestimated the demand that consumers would have given the price points that they're facing. So there's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of inventory inefficiency that we see will contribute to profit degradation as well. And a couple other things that we'll go into in the later slides. Consumer sentiment is down. They're buying fewer units. They are looking at prices in a more sensitive and conscious way. And Kayla, I think you're going to go over that on the next page. So yeah, let's go over the predictions real quick.
All right, so here we go.
Yeah.
5 holiday predictions for the 2022 season. All right.
Early shopping becomes the norm. Okay, so let's talk about this. We know that inflation is high. And I wanted to give you a little bit of an anecdote. I traveled to Brazil about 5 years ago, and I spoke to a colleague of mine who said in Brazil, when they were going through hyperinflation, and you're about to ride a bus, you should pay your bus fare when you get on the bus. Because if you pay your bus fare after the bus fare is over, it might cost you more. That's how bad it was, right? I don't think we're at that state, and you might not have enough money to pay for that bus ride. It's kind of the same mentality here. I think consumers are going to anticipate higher prices, especially in the peak periods of the holiday period. So Cyber Week and December, the first week of December, prices are going to go up. The natural reaction in preparation for that, in anticipation for that, are consumers purchasing their holiday gifts and merchandise in November, potentially even October. Now, we've observed this in earlier years. We've observed that with the ubiquity of e-commerce and the flexibility of e-commerce, nobody really needs to wait until Black Friday, Cyber Monday with those doorbuster sales to get the best deals. You can go online. So we did see online sales creep up into November week 1, November week 2. We think that'll be a lot more higher in comparable sales this season as well. And then this is direct data from our consumer survey. We asked, the population of Albania all over the globe, what are your intentions? Do you plan on buying holiday goods earlier? 42%, 4 out of 10 people on average said that they are. Prepare your merchandise accordingly, prepare your promotions and your campaigns accordingly. I think the demand's going to start pretty early this season because of the fear of the high price hikes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, Dan. And just to add on to that, we asked them, how is inflation impacting your holiday purchasing plans? And the number one reported impact they reported, how they'll change their behavior this year, is to buy earlier. So that is the number one factor that consumers are looking at when they can pull those purchases earlier. And as Dan mentioned about that excess inventory is happening because of the overbuying we saw in light of the inventory shortages in 2021. But you know what? Not all that inventory is in the right category. So how are retailers going to deal with that this year? I think Dan talked a bit about that. Increased promotions. So an earlier promotional season driven by that excess inventory, looking to clear it out before Cyber Week. We'll see a lot of that demand getting pulled into the early part of November and maybe even October. And then finally, Prime Day. Prime Day is back in July. We're going to see a kickoff to the back to school shopping season. I think that will be in earnest. And this will really kick off, holiday mindedness for consumers. Prime Day always brings a halo effect. So you don't need to be selling on Amazon. You don't need to be Amazon to see the effects of Prime Day for your business. We say stand up a Prime Day promotion on your site. Consumers are paying attention. They want to get good deals. So think about how you can tap into that halo effect in July. All right, our second prediction, value, loyalty and value. So over the past 2 years, when COVID happened in March of 2020, we saw loyalty, consumers shifting their loyalty from their favorite brands to new brands because it was driven by convenience and safety and availability. So when we especially remember the toilet paper shortage of 2020, consumers were trying out new brands and products that they could actually find. Now, fast forward to 2022, that loyalty factor is shifting again. Consumers are shifting loyalty due to value. So we're seeing 3 in 5 shoppers say that they will switch their business from their favorite brands between now and the end of the year if they can find another brand that can provide better pricing. So how do you compete with this in light of pricing sensitivities across your audience? And that's where we think personalization really comes into play. So delivering the right price to the right consumer at the right time is really going to be critical this year, especially in light of that highly promotional season that we're anticipating that we just talked about in the previous slide. So more and more retailers and brands are going to be promotional. How does your brand compete in that light of that market? And then finally in this slide, the consumers are becoming even more diversified in terms of economic realities. Lower income shoppers are switching back to basics. Walmart just talked about this. They're seeing their discretionary spending among lower income being pulled back. Meanwhile, right now, higher income shoppers are not as impacted. So how do you manage those two audiences separately? Again, think about intelligent segmentation, delivering that right message to the right customer at the right time. All right, Dan.
All right, here we go. Prediction number 3. I alluded to this earlier. It's my prediction when we take a look at e-commerce, and I mentioned that it's contracting, right? It's actually shrinking compared to 2021. We think there's an opportunity for stores to really move ahead one of our customers, Warby Parker, they make glasses that you can get online. Their store count is less than 100. In 2022, their plans is to go over 900 store locations. And there's a strategy to that, right? It's not really just reaching out to the consumers. They're providing services like vision tests in those store locations. They're providing contact lenses and refills. This is the experience component that I think a lot of retailers stepped away from because e-commerce growth was so huge in the past couple of years. But I think we see a lot more activity and opportunity of the physical locations, even if you are digital native. We should also say that in those store environments, we really want to emphasize to our customers, because we notice this from consumers who are shopping there, they have a lot of questions for the store associates, and the store associates need to be enabled and empowered with the right equipment and the right information about that customer. We see a lot more empowerment that the store channel is providing their employees so that customers, the usefulness and the information they can get online can be translated into the store environment as well. It's not all good news for the stores though. What's holding them back, there are several issues. We've heard about labor costs, maybe not even just the cost, but the availability of bodies to work the floor. There's also omni-channel efficiencies that still haven't been worked out, and operational complexity. When you're dealing with a store environment, you're not messing with the e-commerce tech stack anymore. There's a whole new tech stack, and there's a lot of complexity there. But if you're able to get it right, our big prediction here is we believe the increase in store comparable sales this holiday season will be higher than the increase in online, which is saying something, right? I mean, given all the increase that we've been seeing the last couple of years, I do think this will be a really good year for the store channel. And then, yes, prediction number 4, in this price competitive, price conscious environment, there is one thing that the consumer is willing to spend a little bit more money on, and that's the sustainable options. And it's not really sustainability in the form of sustainable packaging. Sustainable in the fact that you're using the product in a sustainable way, is created with sustainable materials. That is resonating with customers. So when we asked, last month by the way, really fresh data, what's your take on sustainability? Does that matter to you when it comes to the retail offering? 83% of shoppers say yes, we will seek out sustainable products. This is something that is important to Salesforce as well. Sustainability is our 5th value that we added earlier this year. It's good to see that consumers are thinking along the same lines. The number one factor when consumers are ready to shop sustainable options, make it transparent and really easy to see on the packaging. They respond, they're going to gravitate towards it. They don't want to do a lot of research to find out, is this a sustainable choice? And last but not least, we asked this question really in a strategic way. We asked them, would you be willing to buy a sustainable good, and would you be willing to pay more? And 44% said yes. If you surprise them with some sort of premium right at the point of purchase, they are willing to check that box and pay a little bit more. I think there was a number though. There was a threshold that they wanted to.
There is a threshold.
Yeah, there is a threshold that they're willing to pay for this.
So that threshold is $1 to $2. So sustainability is a great opportunity to engage with those conscious shoppers, but don't price yourself out, especially in light of this price-conscious consumer. So just keep that in mind. We don't want to go too high on that, on passing off that cost to the consumer, or you might lose them. All right.
And now our last prediction.
Our last prediction.
Our favorite one.
All right, so prediction number 5, all around digital goods. So there's a lot of chatter in this particular space, and it's very polarizing. We saw that especially in our data, actually. When we asked consumers, are you more willing to buy a physical product this holiday season if it comes alongside a digital product, like an NFT? We got very different results when we broke the data down by generation. So if you were a baby boomer or a Gen X, they were actually less likely to buy the physical good if it came with a digital good. But for millennials and Gen Zs, it was a resounding yes. They were much more motivated to buy. So again, when we think about intelligent segmentation and targeting the right audience, this is absolutely one of those areas that we want to consider. Yeah. But we think that there's a tremendous upside in this particular market. 46% of our survey respondents said that they're considering buying a digital good as a gift this holiday season. Now, they're considering it. Now, it is still a testing out of the market. This particular segment was heavily skewed younger. So younger generations are more likely to buy. They're also, how they're looking at this, they're not looking at it as a unique good or an experience for them. They're looking at it as an investment vehicle. So this is one of the most interesting findings that we saw. They see digital goods as securing some financial security for themselves in the future.
Right. It's maybe not too different than buying a stock for somebody,
Exactly.
right? Yeah. And this is, again, fresh data from last month, 46%. Despite what Kayla said with the boomers and the Gen X people not really interested in this, Gen Z and the millennials make up this 40, is bringing this average where it's essentially 5 out of 10 people are considering it. I also want to mention the misconception that NFTs are just exorbitantly high priced, and that's just not the case. They're very moderately priced giftable items for the generation, and for the type of merchandise you may be selling online, it may be a good thing to accompany with to provide as a merchandising option as well.
Exactly,
So,
and there's also
yeah.
a pricing sweet spot for this. So while there are people that will pay a large amount of money, majority of respondents said that they're willing to spend somewhere around $50 or less for a digital good as a gift for the holiday season. All right.
So yeah, before we conclude, we actually have, despite the predictions that we made today, long-range predictions, we have some tactical and pragmatic guidance on how you can best prepare for the upcoming holiday season. It's 5 months away, but it's good to start planning for it now. So please download our holiday planning guide.
Yep.
The QR code is here. And then I think the next page we have something to, please share your feedback.
Yep.
Hope this was informative. I also want to say it's really hard to predict what the holiday season is going to be like 6 months from now. This is our best take. Please be on the lookout around September. We're going to have a new batch of predictions where we dig a little bit deeper and provide a little bit more of a precise forecast on how big the holiday season would be. So be on the lookout for that. We hope to share with you more then.
Exactly.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and I hope you have a great rest of Connections.